Hello there, and a very warm welcome to another video from Change Tips and Tools. And yes, it's me again, Phil, the Brummie that hails from Birmingham, England. Now, today I'm going to continue the theme of Power Query and combining data. But I'm also going to look at how we can then visualize that data and hopefully give you some ideas of what you can do and how. Now, in a previous video, we have looked at Power Query and how we can use it to combine data from multiple sheets, from different locations into one sheet in Excel, and perform some simple data transformation. In that video, we also discussed the purpose of Power Query and what it's for. And then we went through 3 scenarios of combining data. So if you want to get a refresher on that, or if you've not seen that video, then check out the link in the description for that video. Today, we are going to combine data from multiple files and locations in Power Query, or using Power Query, and then I will show you how you can create a dynamic dashboard based on this data. As with all my videos, there are chapters in the description with timestamps, so you can jump to a particular section if you wish. So let's do this. So here's a preview of what we're going to be building together. So this is a dynamic dashboard that is driven off data pulled in by Power Query from multiple files from multiple locations. So keep watching and let's build this together. The theme is going to be budget versus actuals. So let's talk about the data first. What are we going to be bringing in? So again, I've got tables in each of my single files. So this is for January. So I've got the program, the project, and then I've got the month end date, and then I've got the actuals here. You'll notice the difference from the last video is there's no budget here, and we'll get to that a little later on. But again, it's important that all your files have exactly the same data structure, that they're in a table format, and that you, on the table design, you've named your tables appropriately, and that your sheet or your tab are all named the same. So again, sheet 1 or actuals, just make sure they're all the same, because that has to be the common denominator across all your files. So make sure data structure exactly the same for your actuals, and that your sheet has exactly the same name. Now, as far as where I've stored these files, so again, as far as the structure, it's exactly the same as last time. So we have 2 locations with our actuals that are being stored. So I've got here in location 1, I've got January, February, March, and then in location 2, I've then got January, February, March also. And again, if I open up February in location 2, you'll see sheet name exactly the same. The only difference is that this is February actuals with different programs and different projects, and the table design, the name is based on the month that it represents, i.e. February. So can't overstress that. Make sure your data structure is exactly the same, and that your sheets have exactly the same name for this to work. So let me just close those 2 files down so I don't need them open. And let me close that down because we don't need to look at that again. So as far as my report file, I've split it into a number of tabs. So we've got our static data. So in here, I've created some categories, and all I've done here on the categories, this is a table. And again, in the table design, I've called it table category, so I know what it is. Same with, I've got the program, so what are the programs in my portfolio? And then I've created another cross-reference table where I've got my projects, the program they're related to, and what category. So are they mandatory, regulatory, maintenance, hearts and minds, and so on. You'll notice these little icons. That is simply me using the emojis. So again, if you hold down the Windows key and then the semicolon, that'll bring up the emojis. So that's how I put the emojis in there with text, just so you're aware. And I'll close that down because I don't need to do it again. And all I've done is I've built these tables and named them appropriately. So that's my static data. Again, this here is just a picture. It's not, I've inserted it through my icons, and I've just done some colouring and taken the grid lines off on the sheet just to make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to the eye. So that's my static data. You should only really have to set that up once. I've then got my budgets. So here I've created a table where for the year, so I've got 2024, and I've got the programs, the projects, and then what the budgets are. So these are your baseline budgets that you've agreed for the year. So in this case, for 2024, for each of the program and project, and again, these are all got drop downs here that run off these different tables here. Yeah. So again, I'm using the indirect function. So again, if I look at this table here, it's a drop down based on that. If I go into data validation, you'll see that I'm using the indirect function. So remember, the indirect function turns a text value into a range. So here I'm referring to the table and then the programs. So table and then the programs column here. Okay, so that's how I've done the indirect function to do a lookup on all of these. And the same for category. That is a data validation, lists, indirect, table category, and then the column. So open square bracket, category. And again, the indirect function turns a text reference, that's what's in quotation marks, into an actual range. So hopefully that's clear. So that's how I've set these tables up, and that's how I've set up the budget table, which then looks up the program and the project from table 1, and I've set some budgets. So these are the planned budgets for all my programs and their related projects. Done. Now, obviously, within the static data, I've also associated those projects to a program, and also what category are they: mandatory, regulatory, discretionary, etc. Then what I want to do is I want to create a report. So on this page here, I want to create a report where I can look at my performance by month, budget versus actuals, and I can look at some information. I can look at it from a category, so a mandatory, regulatory, discretionary perspective. I can look at it for the whole year, and if I want to, I can also drill down into the various different categories and the programs and look at that performance as well. Okay, and I'm going to be able to understand the variances. So with that said, let's do this. So I'm going to do some formatting here. So again, I've inserted an icon here, and I'm just going to select this, and I'm going to, on the home tab, I'm just going to fill it with green. I'm going to make my text here, I'm going to make that white. Let's make it bold. Let's take this icon here, and let's make that white as well. So go on the graphic format, fill, make that white also. Then all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take this again, and I am going to do a solid thick line at the bottom. And again, I'm just going to go in there and just format the cell with that row selected. On the border, I'm going to take let's take a darker green. Let's take that one that's thicker and just do that like so. And if I pick up it, you can see it. I'm then going to go to my view tab, and I'm just going to untick the grid line. So I've got this ready and formatted as well. Now, for my workings, I'm going to do some support. I'm going to use a thing called support analysis, where I'm going to create some pivot tables off my data. So again, what I want to do is make sure that these are all, again, the OCD in me, that they're all the same. So height and that. So what I'm going to do is on row 1, I'm going to right click on it, select row height, and I'm going to type in 75 here, just so it's the same height as everything else. And then I'm going to insert an icon. So let's go insert icons. You can do a search. I like this one actually, so I'm going to select that, and I'm going to insert it. That's great. And then here I'm just going to type support analysis like so, and let's make that bigger. I'm going to line it in the middle In fact, no, I'm going to make that 20. Did I do before? 20. So use 20, do bold. And then again, I'm going to take, in fact, what I can do is just take that, do format painter, go to here and just do the same there, and then select the icon and graphics, fill, white. Right, now I've done my formatting here. Let's think about the data and the way that I pull the data into this file so I can start building my dynamic report. So I'm going to select the data ribbon, get data, from file, from folder. And this is where I'm going to go straight to my first location. So that first location, select that and click open. And then I'm going to do transform data. I'm going to move the name to the left. And then with the name and the content, I'm going to select remove other columns. And then I'm going to do the down arrow to combine. Remember where I really emphasize the fact you need to keep the sheet the same name throughout all your files. Sheet 1 here in this instance. So I'm going to select sheet 1, click OK. And there's my data. So it's recognized this as a date. So I'm just going to change this, double click on it and just change it to date, like so. I'm happy with the query name, location 1, so I'm going to do close and load, but I'm going to close and load 2, connection only, so only creates a connection to this, so I'm going to click OK. I'm then going to go to do the same again, so for the second location, so again, get data from file, from folder, and I'm going to choose the second location and click open. Transform data. I'm going to move the name to the left again, select the name and the content, and remove the columns and do the combine, the down arrows to combine files. Choose sheet 1, click OK. And again, that looks good, so I'm going to change the month end. I'm going to double click on that and change that to date again, just rename it date. And again, I'm going to close and load 2 and create a connection only. Wonderful. Right, so I've now got my 2 locations brought in with a connection. Now I want to put some of the tables in there. So I want this table here, which is the projects table, which has got the cross-reference between the project name, the program name, and the category it belongs to. So I'm going to have the table selected. And on the data ribbon, on the data, I'm going to do from a table or range here. I'm going to select that. And there it is. I don't need to make any changes to that. I'm happy with that. I'm going to keep the name. So I'm going to do close, load 2, and again, only create connection to this table. Click OK. Now let's look at our budget. Now, whilst it's easy enough for entering data in as a user, again, it's the program, the project, and then putting the budgets in. It's user friendly, but not Power Query or data friendly. So again, I'm going to have this table selected from table and range on the data ribbon. And what I need to do is I need to make these become rows. So you've got January, then the value, rather than have it as in column headings. So I'm going to select the year, the program, and the project, highlight those, right click, then I'm going to unpivot other columns like so. And there you go. It's now made them rows now. So I've got January and value. Excellent. Now, what I want to do here is take the year and this attribute here, and I'm going to right click, merge columns. And as far as the separator between them, I'm going to use custom and do a hyphen or a dash and click. And the column, I'm going to call it date. Click OK. So I've now merged those. So what I'm going to do now is select that date column, and I'm going to change the type to a date. And then it converts it immediately to a date, like so. Wonderful. Again, I'm happy with the name, and as you can see, like I said in the previous video, it records each step like a macro, so you only have to do this once. So I'm going to do close and load to. I'm going to create a connection only create a connection, and click OK. So I've now got all my queries in there. It's now time to put them together as a data source for my data visualization. So I'm going to right click on this, or just hover over it, in fact, like so, and click the edit. And then I'm going to append as a new query. So with this, I'm going to do append queries. I'm going to do append queries as new, drop down. And this time, so last time we appended 2, I'm going to do 3 or more. So we've got monthly actuals location 1. I want monthly actuals location 2, add that. And I also want the budget, and I'm going to add that, like so, and then click OK. So what it's done, it's recognized this as a date. So we've got actuals. The value here is the budget value, if you remember. So I'm going to make some tweaks to these. So I'm going to make that a number with a decimal, like so. I'm going to make that one a number with a decimal, and I'm going to double click on it, call that budget, like so. I'm then going to add some other values in here. So I want the year and the month, which is going to be important for when we're trying to visualize the data. So on the date column, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to do add column, date, and I'm going to add the year, like so. I'm then going to reselect the date column, and I'm going to, again, under the date, from that date, I'm going to add the month number as well, like so. Wonderful. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this data. Yep, call it data, and I need to now add the category information as well. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to the home ribbon here, and I'm going to select here on here merge queries, and I'm going to select merge queries. I'm not going to merge it as a new, I'm going to do merge queries. So here's my data, and I'm going to select the, if you look at this table, projects. So that's the table we brought in that's got the categories, etc. in. If I select that, now the thing that's the common thing between them is going to be the project on the data and the project and the projects on the table projects, yeah. And I'm going to use a left outer, and you can see that we've got a match for everything. So when we've got left outer, that means keep all the values here, and then bring all the values where you've got a match between these through. And obviously what we're after is this column here, and I'm going to click OK. So I've now got this here, and we've got these 2 outward facing arrows. I'm going to select that arrow there. I don't need projects and I don't need programs, so I'm going to untick. All I want is the category. I don't want the original name, i.e. the original table name, as a prefix, so I'm going to untick that, and then I'm going to click OK. So now, a bit like a VLOOKUP, I've now got all my categories as well based on that. So that is now looking good as far as my data is concerned. So just double checking. Yeah, all looks good. So I'm now going to go close and load 2 and create a connection only. Now I'm going to close down this queries and connections window because I don't need it open anymore, but you can see now that I've got all my queries in there, including the data. Yep. So if I close that down, I'm then going to go to my support analysis file, or sheet should I say, and let's start bringing some data in that we can work with. So with cell C7 selected, I'm now going to start bringing some data in that we can work with to start building a report. So I'm going to do insert pivot table from external data source. I'm going to choose the connection, which is going to be our query data that we created. I'm going to open that up and I am going to put it here within this support analysis sheet here, existing sheet in this cell C7. Click OK. Right, and I'm now going to add category, budget and actuals, like so, and I'm going to put the actuals there above the budget, just order that so it looks a bit different, so it's ordered appropriately. Then I'm going to right click on this, do field value settings, and I'm going to do number format, counting with no decimal places. Click OK, then click OK again. I'm going to right click on the budget, value field settings, number format. I'm going to choose accounting again, take that down to 0 decimal places, and click OK and click OK. Right, I'm then going to add a slicer to this. So I'm going to go to insert slicer, and I want the year, because as we start to build multiple years into this template, I want to be able to just filter on the current year that we're working on. Let me just change that to be, let's go with that one. So we got 2024 selected. Right, great. So let's do our first chart. So with the pivot table selected, I'm going to do insert, and I'm going to insert a bar chart, the 2D one. So I'm going to select that. Let's make it a bit bigger so we can see it. I'm then going to right click on one of the fields, and I'm going to hide all field buttons on the chart. Let's make that a little bit wider. And I'm going to select this axis here and do Control 1, and I'm going to put it in reverse order like so. In fact, I'm going to go onto this pivot table and I'm going to right click on it and do sort largest to smallest, so it actually sorts it appropriately in the chart accordingly. I'm then going to select budget, so I'm going to select the budget column, and with this still selected here, so again Control 1 to bring up the formatting data series, or you can right click on it and do format data series. On the series overlap, I'm going to make that 100% like so, and then I'm going to make the gap width, to make them a little bit thicker, 50, so it's a little bit thicker there. And then still with that budget series selected, I'm going to say no fill, and as far as the solid line here, I'm just going to go solid line, I'm just going to make it a little bit thicker like so, so it stands out a little bit more, and that's fine. And do we make it darker? No, I'm happy with that. So 2. So I've now got that done. Oh, I don't want this series up here, so again I'm going to select that, and on the series format labels, I'm going to set it high because remember it's in reverse order, just so it sits at the bottom. Great. I'm then going to hit the plus icon here. I want a chart title, and on the legend I want the legend to be at the top. So let's give this a chart title. So I'm going to call this budget versus actuals by category. Yeah, do that, and I'm going to take this as well, and I'm going to move it to the top like so. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to take this, I'm going to do Control X. I'm going to go to my report. I think here, let's just put it there. I'm going to do Control V. Again, I'm going to hold down the Alt key, which makes it snap, and let's just adjust it. So I'm happy with that. Good. Right. So that's my first chart done. To go back to my support analysis. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this pivot table here a meaningful name. So on the pivot table analysis, I'm just going to give it a name, and every pivot table that I create, I'm going to give it a meaningful name, and it'll mean more later on. But again, a bit like the table, so you know what you're referring to. So pivot, PVT, and let's pull this support Burge versus Act versus Act by category. There you go. So I know what that pivot table is, like so. I'm then going to take this pivot table and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to copy the same pivot table and reuse it all through this. And again, there's a reason for me doing it this way. I don't have to redo the formatting on the columns, but also then it means that when I want to apply a dynamic filter, it means that dynamic filter is applied to all those tables accordingly. So I'm going to do Control Copy, and I'm going to paste it here next to it, do Control V. Let's make that a little bit wider. And again, with this, let's get rid of the formatting from the chart. I'm just going to, again, if you can't see this, by the way, if you've got the pivot table selected, do Pivot Analysis ribbon and do Field List, and you can see it. So I'm going to change this now. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of category, and I actually want it by year and month. Okay, that looks good. Yeah. So I'm going to rename this to be my pivot numbers for year. Yeah, and hit return. Now again, on this one, I'm going to do, with the pivot table selected, I'm going to do insert, and I'm going to take this table here. I don't need that there. I'm going to do Control X with that chart selected. I'm going to go straight to the report. I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to do Control V, and I'm going to hold down my Alt key just so it's similar. Do for now. Again, right click on the one of the fields, hide all field buttons because take up too much space. And again, I'm going to select the budget, which is this one here. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to do Control 1. Again, I'm going to make them 100% overlap, and I'm going to make this 50 so they're wider. And then on the fill, on the bucket icon here, I'm going to do no fill. On the border, I'm going to make it a solid line, and again, I'm going to make it 2. like so. And again, with this selected, I'm going to put chart title, and then on the legend again, I'm going to put that at the top. So let's take this. So this is budget versus actuals for the year. If I put this here above, like so, and there we go. Again. Right, so I've now got my two charts. So I've got my budgets versus actuals for the year and budget versus actuals by category. Now the next thing I want is and she's probably should make that a little bit thinner there as a column, is I'm going to take this pivot table and again highlight it, select it and do Control copy. I'm going to go to my report table and I'm going to paste it here where you can see the Control V. And again on this I'm going to make some changes. So let's get rid of that. Let's go to pivot analysis and do field list, and I want this here. So I've got the program. That's great. I want, as far as the design, I want a blank row after each item, and I want a subtotal at the bottom of each item. That's great. And let's rename these here. So I want, this is budget versus actuals. Let's make this prog actuals, and let's make that prog budget, like so. Right. I think on this one, just going to turn them around because I want the budget first. There we go. Okay, so I like that format. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of, so on the portfolio analysis, I'm going to get rid of the buttons. They're not there. And then with the pivot table selected, on the pivot table analysis, I'm going to do field, items, and sets. I'm going to do a calculated field, and I'm going to call this variance. So this is going to be actuals minus budget. If I click OK, wonderful. And I'm going to rename this to be prog variance. And I'm just going to take these on the home tab, align them to the right. Now I'm going to put a visual indicator. So if it's a negative, it means we've underspent. We've not spent the budget. And if it's a plus number, a positive number, it means we've overspent against the budget. So with that in mind, I'm going to select the variance, one of these in here, and I'm going to do conditional formatting. I'm going to do icon sets, and I'm going to choose this one here. And then on this icon here, I'm going to do the drop down and say apply it to all the program variance values. So as the pivot table changes, this will change with it as well accordingly. And then still within that field selected, I'm going to do conditional formatting again and do manage rules, and I'm going to select that and edit the rule. So first of all, I'm going to do it in reverse order. I don't want the middle one, so I'm going to do no icon set there, and I'm going to change the first value here to be a number, and it needs to be greater than 0. So anything that's greater than 0 is bad, so I'm going to put a red X there, and then change this one again to a number. And again, that means then anything less than 0 will be a tick, or any negative numbers will be a tick. If I do OK and do apply and OK, so that's now set. So with this pivot table still selected, I'm then going to add a timeline slicer, so I can filter the view here based on the month. So with it selected, I'm going to do insert timeline slicer there. I'm going to select the date and click OK. And let's hold down the Alt key so it snaps into position like so. And again, let's make that bigger. It's just, there you go. And then on this, I'm just going to name this pivot table like I did the other pivot tables. Again, give it a meaningful name. So on the pivot table analysis with this selected, I'm going to call this pivot categories for report, like so. So I know what it is. Now that I've named all my pivot tables, I'm going to select this slicer. I'm going to change that. So again, timeline. So let's go with that one. It matches the theme here, the color theme. And I am going to right click on this and do report connections. So I've got the pivot category for report, which is this one, and I'm also what I want, because I always want the year for all the year to be displayed. So I then want this one here selected and click OK. So now with that done, is if I select, so look at this here, get that all lines up. So if I select Jan, everything changes dynamically. So this has all changed now. If I select Feb, again, you can see it's all changing dynamically based on what I've selected. Great. So I can now see this information. So the next thing I want to do is I want to put some information up here just to add some summary information against this report and this data. Let's go to, so I want some summary information on here based on what's being displayed on here. So let's go to my support analysis. So let me just type out the categories that I want on the report at the summary at the top first. Those are the numbers that I want on the front sheet. So the portfolio budget is easy. I'm going to do equals and go to my report page, and I'm going to go down to the bottom here, and I'm going to take the budget here, and you'll see it's get pivot data. What that means then is as this table expands and changes based on a selection, is that this will automatically pick that up and be dynamic. So if I hit return, and again, if I then do portfolio actuals and do equals and go back to my report, take the actuals column here and hit return, and then if I do equals and take the variance from the report, as I say, this will all automatically change based on that get pivot data. So I'm going to highlight those, and again I'm going to make those accounting, and I'm going to get rid of the decimal places there as well. Now the portfolio budget itself is easy enough because that's that value. So again, I can do equals, get value, and hit return. However, I'll just take these, I'll take that, copy that format. I'm just going to do it all the way down, so I've got that format. But these are not so easy. I want a sum of where we've got a value in this pivot table, and then obviously I want the sum of based on where we've got actuals up to, I want a sum of that budget as well. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put this, I'm going to put actuals, and I'm going to put budget. Let's make those bold, like so. I'm then going to do a filter. So I'm going to do equals a filter. So the array that I want to return is this here. Yeah, I want that to return. I'm going to do and that's what I want to return. To include, I am going to only include the values where they are greater than 0. Yeah, I'm going to do a close bracket. Right, so I've got those values there, so that's worked. Again, I'm going to select that and do counting and get rid of the decimal places. Again, then I'm going to do accounting and get rid of the decimal places. Right, now on the budget one, it's going to be the same thing. So I'm going to do equals, filter. My array that I want to return is this, so the budget values. To include, I'm going to do the same conditions I did for the actuals. So where this is greater than 0, and then do return. And there you go. So I've now got the budget numbers there as well. And then all I've got to do here is if I just go here and do Alt equals, it gives me a sum at the bottom. As far as the variance is concerned, yeah, so I'll take that there and we call that variance. Let's make this meaningful here as well, so I understand what it is. Year to date actuals, that's year to date budget, and that's year to date variance. Yep, a little bit bigger, and again that's going to equal my actuals minus my budget. Yeah. Now, what I want to do is if I then copy that down and then just copy that to the right, I've now got my to date variance. Yeah. So now I've got these calculations done. Again, I'm just going to make that just calculation so we can see it. Now I've got that information. That is going to be equal to my year-to-date budget return. That is going to be equal to my year-to-date actuals that I've just got calculated there. And again, this is all going to be dynamic as this updates, and that's going to equal my year-to-date variance. Right, so I've now got my numbers being calculated here. Let's put some things on our report. So if I go to my report, go up to the top here. So and I'm going to go insert. I want a text box. Let's put that there. And I am going to put on the shape format. I don't want any fill, so no fill. And I don't want an outline. And then here with that text box selected, I'm going to do equals, do some more report analysis, and I want to equal that label there and do OK. So now with that text box selected, I'm going to make it, let's make it 20. Like so, make it bold, central aligned. Let's make it in the middle of the box as well. That's great. And then if I take that, hold down my Alt key so it kind of clicks to place like so. And then I'm going to hold down my Control key and then drag that up to create a copy of it. And I'm going to change the equals to be, instead of G2, G, I'm going to make that H so it pulls through the actual number. And again, with that selected, just make that 20, like so. Make that bold as well. So now, if I take these two, that there, if I them both selected, do format and then do align center, like so. Got it. Again, I'm going to change that font to be that color, and let's make that same color as well. So let me just quickly do the rest. Okay, I've now got all my values here. I don't like these labels here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change it. So again, I don't have to change anything here. All I've got to do, because so I'm going to put here budget for month, actuals for month, and then here I'm going to put variance for like so. If I go over to the report, as you can see, it's now changed. So let's line these up. I'm still not sure about the size of these, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all. What I can do to save time here is I'm just going to go to, on the home ribbon here, find and select. I'm going to do objects, which means then I can just do that. I'll select the objects that are in there. Then what I'm going to do is just make them all a little bit 12, yeah. So let me just finish tweaking these in the home. Remember to take this off. So and select that. So now I can set the cells. I'm going to do insert icons. So I want a target icon. Let's go with that one. I then want countings. Let's take that one, and let's do warning, some kind of warning. And yeah, let's go with that one. There. Insert all three. And I'm going to make them all sort of 0.5 centimeters square, so they're kind of small. And then I'm just going to take these. So target, you can go actually. Let's make them one. Right. That'll do. Yeah. Take you there. That can be over there. And that can be there. It's slightly smaller, so let's make them 0.8. That's better. And let's make the fill. Let's make them dark green. And then I can take those, hold down the control key and just copy them over to here as well. And then just take that, move it over a little bit, take that, move that over a little bit. And I think that looks fine there. And then I'll possibly, let's take this and do format cell border, and let's go with just a let's go with that one. Let's go with that one. Let's do it like so and do it okay. And then same with this one. Format cell. Let's just put that order, that one there to there, and do OK. Right. So now these should, so if you look at your budget for a month, if I do that, you'll see certain things are changing. Everything's dynamic, like so. And if I want to play with the theme here, is I'm going to select this corner here, and let's go to page layouts. I'm going to go with office, and then color themes. I can change these color themes like so. Then, yeah. So it's changed all my themes. Let's go another color palette. Let's do blue, green, blue. Oh, looks kind of nice, doesn't it? But there you go. I've now got my dashboard done. So what happens when we bring more data in? Yeah. So at the moment we've got actual going up to March. So again, if I open up my folder. So with my folder open, I'm going to go into April. I'm going to take the actuals file for location 1, do control copy, back to my actuals. Let's paste that into that location. I'm going to go to, again, back to here and go to location 2. Control copy that. And again, just simulate the actuals being added. So there are those actuals. So if I then just go data, refresh all, done. And there you go, there's April actuals now. So if I select April, I've now got April information in there, and I can see what's going on. Now, this is all wonderful, but remember when I said that we are copying the same pivot table and using the same pivot table running from the data query, and there's a reason for doing that, because that means then on the report at the moment we can filter on a date and we can see this interact. Well, wouldn't it be great if we could select mandatory and see what that does as far as all these numbers are concerned, or if you want to look at a particular program or project? Well, we can. So we're going to move some things around here, and we're going to add some additional slices. So the first thing I'm going to do is, because I don't want to have to mess around with resizing all these again once I move things around, because that's a bit of a nightmare, I'm going to make sure these don't change when I move things down here to the right to make room for the additional slices. So I'm going to get in on the home tab again. I'm going to go on the find and select, and I'm going to select objects again. So from about here, I'm just going to select all these, and then I'm going to right click or do control 1. So I can either format object like so, or do control 1. And then on here, on the size and properties here, I'm going to open the properties and I'm going to click don't move or size with cells like so. Okay, that's very important to do at that point. And I'm going to go back to find and select, and then untick that so I can select the cells. So I've done that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these things over to the right, and then I'll have to resize these column widths for this, but I don't want these moving around. So now that I've done that, I'm going to select the whole of the pivot table like so. Don't need that up. And I'm going to drag it across. So let's drag it across to there, shall we? Yeah. So as you can see, it's so let's expand these columns. See, these are not moving now based on what I'm doing. So let's just expand these so we can see all the data. Wonderful. Then I'm going to take these charts and let's move these over as well. So let's move all these things over. Done. I'm happy with that. So with this pivot table selected, I'm going to insert some additional slicers. So on the insert, on the slicers, so I'm going to select category, program, and projects like so, and click OK. Wonderful. And then I'm just going to move them over here. And again, with them all selected, on a slicer, I'm just going to change it to be that there, so it just looks the same as the rest of the report. So I'm going to take the first one, which is category, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key, so it snaps. And then on the slicer ribbon, I'm going to change it to 3 columns. And I'm going to raise it like so. Gosh. And again, I'm going to take the program, down the Alt key, so it just snaps there. And again, I'm going to do on the slicer ribbon, I'm going to do 2. I'm just going to so. Now I'm going to take the projects and again hold down the Alt key, and I'm going to make that again. Let's make that 2 columns. Open it nice and wide like so. And let me scroll down. And let's make this again. And let's hold down the Alt key. Gosh. So now, I'm just going to take this here and this, and this, and do Control-1. On the size, again, I'm just going to say don't move, so don't want to interfere with this stuff up here. And all I'm going to do here is just make this a little bit wider, like so. Brilliant. That looks a little bit neater now, doesn't it? So now the next thing I need to do is I need to connect these to my pivot table. So selecting slicer, I'm going to right click on it, do report connections, and I'm going to select all of them. So pivot category by report, the year and the budget versus actual by category, and click OK. I'm going to do the next one, right click on it, report connections, select them all, click OK, and then finally last one, right click on it, report connections, and select, and then click OK. Now that I've done that, I not only have the ability to filter by the date, but I can also select mandatory and look at all mandatory items. And as you can see here now in the slices, it's highlighting all the programs that are part of that mandatory here, and again you can see all the projects that are part of that mandatory as well item. And again, the views have filtered accordingly, as well as the information, summary information at the top. So I can see for mandatory that there is a year-to-date underspend, which is fine. As far as for the month, there is an overspend, and I can see what the total budget is for mandatory here. If I take that off, I can select programs. If I select program E, I can then see the information as far as program E and what those related projects are, and so on. And again, if I remove that filter, so now I have the ability to very easily drill into the information and see what this report can tell me as far as my budget versus actuals. So I hope you found that a useful and informative video. If so, please remember to like, subscribe, and click the notifications button for any future content. And I wish you a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Please take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye bye now.